What's up, everybody? It is Friday, and I want to do something a little bit different in this video. And I want to talk about the power of positive influence in people's lives. And I think it's important. I think it's something that we all are called to do when the time is right. And I want to tell you a story about somebody who had an enormously positive impact on my life at a very weird time. And this was a teacher that I had. Her name is Dr. Margaret Hamlin. I have never shared this story publicly, and I don't even know if she remembers it, and I've never talked to her about it. We're friends on Facebook today. But I thought this might be kind of interesting to talk about because I think it is important, and I think it's important to recognize these things. So I'm going to take you back to the 9th grade for me. This was 1986. 1986. That guy. I had an extremely consistent childhood growing up. At that point in my life, I had been to exactly 2 different schools. One fed into the other one, so it was the same group of students that I had known since kindergarten. But for me, the older I got, the more difficult school became. I was a horrible student. Academics were very challenging for me. I couldn't take a test to save my life. I mean, my attention span would be all over the place. I couldn't focus, especially if we had a timed test. I would be so worried about the buzzer going off that I couldn't do it. I mean, it was just so difficult for me, and I didn't know why. And in all fairness, this was the mid-'80s, and I don't think that people had given as much attention into things like different learning styles that they do today. There was one way of doing it, and it was that way or the highway. And, you know, my teachers were trying to be helpful. They would tell my parents things like, Ted is a very smart kid. He just needs to learn how to apply himself. What the heck does that even mean? I need to learn how to apply myself. I was trying as hard as I could. I just couldn't do it. And I got to the point where I honestly was starting to believe that I was lazy and stupid. There was some reason I didn't get what all the normal kids were able to do, and it really became difficult. And this came to a head for me in the 9th grade. And that year, they used to send home these mid-semester report cards, and they weren't official, but they were sent to your parents, so if there was any adjustments that needed to be made, you could make them before the end of the semester. And I remember coming home from school one day, and my mom was in there, and she had opened this thing up, and I thought she was going to skin me alive. I was failing everything. All of my subjects, except PE, I had like a B or a C, and then art, I had an A in, but everything else, straight across the board, math, history, science, Fs. I mean, it was the worst. And that was a tough night to get through because my parents were not impressed. But it was really, really hard for me. And I just, there weren't any excuses or anything. I didn't know what was wrong. I couldn't figure it out. Well, that semester, I had an English class with Dr. Hamlin, and we had been studying Shakespeare, and we had been reading Macbeth, and I liked Macbeth. I loved the crazy story of backstabbing and all the drama that went on there, but Shakespeare was very difficult for me to read, and I struggled in her class just like all the others. And I was having a hard time, and then I remember one week, because we had been studying Shakespeare, she gave us a poetry assignment, and we looked at some other poets, and I started looking at some things, and I thought, wait a minute, I think I got this. This was something creative that I could do, that I could make. It was a heavy academic school, and it was a pretty high standard that people were held to. And I thought, I got this. And so I started working on this, and I started working, and I worked, and I worked. And I got to the point where I wanted some outside help just to make sure it was extra good. So I had another teacher that agreed to help me during study hall and after school, and we were really kicking this thing into shape. And the poem is long gone now, but I remembered it being pretty cheesy. It was about, forlorn love or something like that. And I remember I had some metaphor of a tree bearing fruit that was too high to reach. Anyway, it was really cheesy. But I really tried hard to get the metaphors and the alliterations and my words and everything right. I turned this thing in, sat down, had class, and I remember going home, came back the next day. Go down, sit down in my seat in Dr. Hamlin's class. And she gets up and she said, Mr. Forbes, I need to see you in the hall for a second. This was never a good group of words that I wanted to hear, and I said, okay. And so I'm going out in the hall, and I'm like sweating, and I'm so nervous. And when your knees are weak, and I just thought she was going to hand it to me, and I'd failed it once again. I was going to get thrown out of school or something crazy. Anyway, we go out in the hall, and she hands me my paper. I open it up. It says A+. And I just about fell over. I didn't even know what to say. I had tried really hard, and she said, I have not seen you do this kind of work. This is outstanding. She said, I think this is something you wanted to do, obviously, and you went to great lengths to get it done right. And she recognized that, and so I was, thank you very much. And she said, can I offer a bit of advice? And I said, sure. And she said, have you ever considered that this school and this environment might not be right for you? And I mean, I'd never heard that. And this wasn't something that a lot of people like would recognize back then. And I said, well, no. I mean, what do you mean? And she said, well, there is what they call a magnet school. There's an arts magnet school. It's within the public school system. And you have to audition to get in, but you can go and you can study music, art, theater, or dance, and depending on what you want to do. And at that time, I was really into music, and she said, you ought to go check it out. You still have to take your academics, but this will give you an environment where you're around other creative people. And I said, okay. And so I went and talked to my parents about it. We went and visited the school, and that was that. I auditioned, I got in for music, and I never looked back. In fact, I don't even think I went into the old school ever again. And that was the last I saw of any of that. And so that's kind of why I'm telling you the story, because I know Dr. Hamlin is on Facebook, and I've never told her this story, and that changed my life. A lot of my friends look back at high school as being a very miserable time, and I don't. I loved high school. That was an amazing time for me. It was very important, and it shaped exactly who I am today. And so the reason I'm sharing you the story is, we have everything seems like a national holiday. We have National Pizza Day, National Hot Dog Day, National Women's Day, National this day, National that day. And one of the things that bothers me is, why do we need a national day to recognize and give credit to people on things? That's number one. Number two is, I think teaching is probably the most thankless profession one could possibly go into. You generally have to have way more education and background to go anywhere in that field. It's more important than anything else, because as kids, those are the people we look up to. Those are the people that we're around. Those are our influences. Teaching is extremely important. And so I wanted to take today to thank Dr. Hamlin and just recognize her as a teacher and express how outstanding she is and what a major impact she had on my life. And I think the important thing going forward is, I think every one of you probably has, that's watching, somebody that was a teacher in their life that changed everything for you. And I want to know what those things are. Consider leaving a comment in here. Make it a discussion. I think it's really important. And for all of us, there's going to come a time where we are equipped to do the right thing and have a positive influence on someone else's life. And I think it's important to remember these things, knowing when that time comes that we can step up too. So that's all I got for today. If you guys enjoyed this video, please remember to like it, share it, subscribe to The Art of Photography for more videos. Let's get out there and do some good. Until the next video, see you guys then. Later.